Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Moonboy Podcast. My name is Dallin Anderson and I am with my buddy Donovan at DIY Investing. And today we are going to be talking all about how you can turn all of this fear into clarity. It's going to be really awesome because we're taking the panic in the markets and we're strategizing and planning so that we can profit off of all of this energy. Because really, when you get fear, you have to look at it as energy instead of looking at it as fear. Everybody else is going to get super scared and panic, but really, if you look at it in the right way, that's just a bunch of energy, and that's something that you can definitely capitalize off of. So the stock market and everything has been acting crazy along with Bitcoin, and we have seen the reflection in the markets and on Twitter. Everybody is so scared, and that is why it's going to be so profitable for everybody that follows along with what you learn in today's podcast. Make sure that you guys go ahead and hit that like button for us on both this channel and on Donovan's, as well as subscribing to both this channel and Donovan's. Links will be in the description for all of that, and you guys can also comment down below if you want to let us know where you're tuning in from. So yeah, mainly going to be talking about turning this fear into clarity, but we're also going to be going over the stock to flow, BitMEX shutting down, short-term price versus long-term price, and sticking to the plan that we have in place and that we've always said about our long-term investments and our strategies on how we play those.
Right.
So Donovan, what do you think about all the fear lately?
Well, it has been absolutely insane, obviously. I mean, this is something I'd have to say hardly anybody were ever expecting. Most people didn't prepare for it in any sort of sense. I know that this has been something that really just shook up the market from the deepest cores that exist. I feel like if there was anybody that was not here for the long term or that was just going to panic sell at some point, that was the time in which it happened. And so I do believe we finally moved on from that point. I think that we thought the capitulation took place at about 3,200. And then obviously we had that major trend line since about 2016 that was now broken from the sell-off. And
on the logarithmic chart, that huge trend line that everybody draws.
Yeah, and so we've broken from that, and so I think that if there was ever going to be a shakeout to take place, now is the time to do it. There's a lot of different events that took place with BitMEX shutting down, forced liquidations that took place on the exchange, and so it was something very crazy that took place. A lot of people lost money, and there's just a lot of people panic sold. Yeah, exactly. For sure. And I mean, with right now, if you're somebody that's still holding through this dip, I mean, really that market,
Good job, by the way.
Yeah,
that's strong hands.
Yeah, if you weren't there selling when it was initially going off, then really you probably missed the dip because it happened just so fast. It was insane. I mean, I went to bed the night before. Bitcoin was worth like 7,600. Woke up the next morning, it was worth 59. Went to bed that night, and it was worth it. At one point, it peaked all the way back down to $3,800, and so it was absolutely insane.
Below 4K, huh?
It's insane.
Yeah, and the triangle that I have drawn on the logarithmic chart showed that the bottom of that triangle could be around 4K. So the fact that we fell to that point doesn't technically mean that we have failed any technical reasons that we would have to go into a deeper correction. It's always possible, but for us this is a long-term investment anyways, so the shorter-term price action, if support fails, all of that is more meaningless to us because although it does affect our portfolios on the short term and it's emotionally affects us, you know, to a degree, just because when you're invested in anything, you're dedicating to putting some emotion towards it. No matter how good you are at trading, there's always going to be a degree of emotion. And so yeah, we do experience that emotion. We do experience the price drop in our accounts, the portfolio level drop, you know, but for the long-term investing perspective, that's really, you have to focus on that long-term kind of goal and don't get stuck up in the short term.
And I mean, that really does bring me to my point, is the fact that from the very beginning of my group and from the beginning of my channel, I've always told everybody this was going to be a long-term process. And the longer that I was in crypto, the more I had been a part of the cycle, the more that I structured my own personal portfolio and trading plan to more of that long-term perspective, because to me,
basing your selling off timing
instead
of price.
There's just so much that can happen in terms of price action. I mean, we just barely saw that. With Bitcoin being as volatile as it is, we didn't know what was going to happen in the wake of a sell-off with the stock market. We didn't know what was going to happen. You know, obviously we have this pandemic that's going on. It's creating a lot of fear. we've never had a trialing period inside of Bitcoin's price structure, and so there was really no way of knowing what way it was going to react from all of this. And so you do have all of this fear inside of the normal markets, and it has reacted in Bitcoin in a more negative way than most people would have liked. But we also have to remember that with what happened, you're going to have tons of liquidations that were taking place with the stock market. It initially started tanking. People were getting margin called. They needed to take cash and then throw those on their previous margins that they had open inside of the stock market. So it only makes sense that they're going to be liquidating some of their assets. Bitcoin being one that is just $100 billion in market cap, hasn't been around for a long time. We've never fully experienced a sort of decline like we have in the stock market with a lot of fear. And so it makes a lot of sense why we would see the reaction that we did. I mean, Bitcoin sold off significantly, but with that being said, we always have to keep that long-term outlook in mind, because for me, and what I've told everybody inside of my group, was that I wasn't going to be taking profits until the end of 2021. Not only is it better for tax purposes, but the way that I like to invest in this market is a longer term, holding the length of the trend. I wish I had more cash that I could have disposed at this dip, but it's just something that happens. There's going to be these big shakeouts. And the best thing that you can do in these times is not be the person that's selling those bottoms, but rather looking at the big picture trend, seeing kind of what's forming. Even though we have broken, one thing I want to talk about before we jump into anything else is the fact that we did have this big long-term log trend. And this was our trending support since 2016, and we actually bounced off that at 3,200. And then recently, when we actually went back down to that 6K support floor before bouncing again, we went back down and retested that same trend line again. But what happened with this sell-off was we actually broke through that, and that was our trend line that's held us for the last 4.5 years about.
Right.
And so now that we're seeing this,
so this is minor capitulation.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I think it is, because the same thing happened in the last cycle. In 2015, we had a bullish trend line that was the trend line that had formed from the previous parabolic run up to like 1100 per coin or whatever. And then we got a bear market, an ABC correction. And at the very bottom of that bear market, we failed our logarithmic trend line, went below the logarithmic trend line, and we capitulated. And that was minor capitulation. When the miners capitulate and they stop mining because it's not profitable for them to mine anymore, is right when it's the best time, in my opinion, to invest in the market, and also the best time to mine, because you're going to be able to mine with very low difficulty. There's not a lot of competition, and if you're thinking long term in the big picture, and you're basically buying that fear by mining through it. You're mining through
because they're not making money right now.
Exactly, and so minor capitulation, in my opinion, and from what I've seen in Bitcoin, leads to a large bull market.
Exactly.
And that's what I think just happened, is we had that logarithmic trend line again. We capitulated through the logarithmic trend line. We already had price capitulation, investor and trader capitulation, when Bitcoin reached $3,000 in 2018. But now we're going into minor capitulation, where the miners are getting out of the market. And that is what's causing so much fear. And everybody's posting the chart about the trend line being failed, when really, if they would have been around for the early Bitcoin cycles, they would have known that Bitcoin has actually a tendency to fail logarithmic trend lines.
Every single one of the previous parabolic trends since Bitcoin has been around, each capitulation takes place after the logarithmic trend line has been filled. And that marks the exact bottom for each and every cycle. Now, for me, I'm not going to lie, I thought for sure that at $3,200 that was going to be the capitulation, and I just figured that we'd maybe start this new trend and we would just kind of parody off of the old one. But that's not what happened. But we're seeing in both of the last two previous bubbles, each time capitulation has taken place was after the break of that major trend line. And now, even though we kind of consolidated and it took a lot longer before we broke that same trend line, the same thing is still playing in effect. And that's why I think that as long as you're analyzing the previous trends, there shouldn't be so much fear right now, because this is something that's happened many times previously. Yeah,
and it's not like we predicted this. We didn't predict that the logarithmic trend line would fail. We're not going to sit here and try to pretend like we knew that this was going to happen. But it happened, and we can sit down and we can remain emotionless. We can stay logical, we can look at our charts, and we can look at what happened last time we fell the logarithmic trend line. And that was minor capitulation in the bottom of the previous cycle. So yeah, 3,000 per coin was capitulation. It was just investor capitulation. And now we're getting minor capitulation. So, that's kind of what I expect to happen. If we're completely wrong and if Bitcoin goes into a deeper bear market, if we go into 1,000 per coin or something like that, then you guys, at that point, it's so undervalued and like stocks and everything would be crashing too. Like, at that point, you're basically surrendered to the market anyways. That's full on surrender. If there was a bigger correction and if this major support failed, which currently I'm personally watching this support as it's developing price action around the support to see what kind of candlestick structure we get. But you guys, if that happens, like, what were you going to do about it anyways?
Exactly.
So the only thing that you really can do is stick to those big time frames and have strong hands and buy the dip. Yes, I'm personally going to deploy some money into the dip on Monday when I can get around to my bank. And I just think that I'm going to capitalize off of all of this fear personally. Yes, Bitcoin, everything is possible, you guys. We've always said that. Technically, everything is possible when it comes to technical analysis. It can go any direction it wants to. But we're looking at what's happened in the past. And what happened in the past is when miners capitulate, it's time to get into the market.
Right. And I think that with this last cycle, if we kind of take a look, we topped at about 20,000. Now, previously up to that point, what we had was 100% retail-driven cycles. Everything was retail. And then with 2017, the day that Bitcoin started correcting was when we had futures trading that got launched for Bitcoin. For the first time ever, institutions were able to short Bitcoin. And then that was the exact day that Bitcoin started going down. We went into that bear market. And so, for me, this new cycle since 2018 has been 100% institutional. And I believe that retail exited at $3,200, but it was the miners, like you said, that still needed to capitulate before we could fully start this new bull trend. And so one of the charts, and I don't know who made the chart, and I remember seeing it a few months back, and so I really wish that I could, if somebody maybe knows what I'm talking about, but there was a chart that showed the amount of addresses, Bitcoin addresses, that were holding 1,000 Bitcoin plus.
Right.
And
so whale accounts,
yes,
basically.
Exactly. Institutional, big whales, big time investors that have money. The amount of addresses that held 1,000 plus Bitcoin
went parabolic in the bear market.
in the last few months, it has gone more parabolic, and there's more people holding 1,000 plus Bitcoin than pre-Mt. Gox days, when Bitcoin was worth dollars. And so, what we're seeing
biggest
right now,
shakeout in the entire history.
Exactly.
In my opinion, what we're seeing right now in Bitcoin is the biggest bear trap in human history that
I agree.
I will probably ever see in my entire lifetime.
Yeah, and it's a great buying opportunity, and people are not maximizing it. It's insane to me, and I just mentioned this on one of my last YouTube videos. The fact is, right before we crashed, there was a lot of people hitting me up asking me what price they should buy. They wanted to see Bitcoin come down a little bit lower before they started buying. And then you see the entire cryptocurrency market crash, and now nobody
they're
wants
too
to
scared
buy.
to buy.
Exactly.
They're like, oh, I wish I could pick some up at 5,000 and 6,000, and then the price is at 5,000 and 6,000, and now they think that we're going into a major super bear market, that everything's going to completely fail support and go down forever. And that just doesn't make any logical sense to me. In my opinion, Bitcoin cryptocurrency is set out to do extremely well, especially in an economic recession.
Right.
In fact, the dollar crashing, the stock market crashing, the strength behind the American economy, that crashing is good for Bitcoin because it perfectly reflects the fact that you can't infinitely print money. Right. You can't infinitely pump the entire stock market by just injecting more fake money into it. Monopoly money only works for so long. I tweeted out the other day, I was like, the Fed injecting money into the stock market right now is literally like me trying to put root beer inside of one of my vehicles and drive it. Like, it's a cool and sweet story, but it just doesn't work at all. And that's exactly how I feel about it. So I do personally believe that we are probably going into an economic recession when it comes to the U.S. economy, the U.S. stock market. And what really, really happens when that occurs is we see a large correction in overvalued, specifically tech stocks is what we're going to see, because those are what shine. Amazon looks like Bitcoin. Amazon.com looks exactly like Bitcoin in 2018. So we're going to see a crash in the U.S. economy. In my opinion, that will reflect positively in Bitcoin's price because Bitcoin is a deflationary asset. And so when you have a correction and a crash in an economy based on an inflationary currency, and you have a deflationary currency to counter that, it only makes sense that when we have a crash in the stock market, that the safe haven will be Bitcoin. And that's extremely controversial. You say that to people and they're like, oh, there's no way.
Especially after the crash.
Exactly. They're like, oh, well, but look, the S&P crashed and Bitcoin did at the same time. The thing about that is that Bitcoin has grown over time in its cross correlation. So although the S&P and Bitcoin at the start were correlated, over time they've become more and more cross correlated. And their correlations are generally in the smaller time frames. In the bigger picture, in the bigger time frames, the corrections are actually in the opposite, opposing places from each other in Bitcoin. And so I think that will reflect again, and we will go into a major bull run in Bitcoin and a major correction in the stock market.
So really the only thing I have to say is this was what the common belief system was regarding Bitcoin literally a week ago. And now it's completely changed. Everybody should take time to really analyze the fact, go through Twitter, go through Reddit, go through TradingView, and just notice how much the sentiment has shifted over the last week. Now, the reason I bring that up is because of the fact everybody's belief system was that Bitcoin was going to overthrow the current financial system. We were going to see the stock market top out. We were going to see inflation start to take off, money printing, hyperinflating.
Because that's what the technology is designed to do.
Exactly. And that's
designed to take over.
It was spawned directly after the 2008 financial crisis. You know, it's not coincidental why Bitcoin would come up right after the entire economy already almost imploded. Now, it uptrends for the 10 years that it's around. And now we get a little bit of a shakeout inside of the global markets and everybody completely loses their minds. Now, to me, I've always believed in the longevity of cryptocurrency, and I personally have always been willing to kind of take that to the ground. If Bitcoin drops and we go into new lows, we go to $1,000 per coin, I'm going to be there finding every possible route that I can to get more cash, to accumulate the dip. I've told everybody how I'm all in on crypto, and that's not a lie. I'm so confident in the technology regarding cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, and I think that it's a perfect hedge for what's taking place. Sure, short term we're seeing a lot of volatility, we're seeing some losses, but I think that this is really what Bitcoin was designed for. And even though we are seeing this short-term capitulation taking place, I view it as capitulation. I don't look at it as necessarily a development of an even steeper bearish trend to $1,000. But I just think that people are they're
overreacting.
For sure.
Because technically speaking, the technology behind Bitcoin, what it was programmed to do, the community that built it, the people that use it every single day, it still works for all of that stuff. Yeah, I can take my Bitcoin today and I can send it to somebody across the country. I can do remittances with my family if I need. Let's say that I'm a family, and I have people in America and I have people in Argentina, and I'm trying to get money from America to Argentina to feed my family. I can send it through Bitcoin today with a cheaper fee. I don't have to go through a bank. It functions as the technology it was designed to do. So when price reflects something differently than what the technology is supposed to do, then you always have divergence. That's a divergence in what Bitcoin is, Bitcoin as an idea. And so when we get a large divergence right here, where price is diverging, it's going down, but the technology has done nothing but improve and get better,
more institutional,
it's going to flip. It can't last forever. And so this right here, this broadening wedge pattern on Bitcoin, by the way, it's a broadening wedge or an expanding wedge. The drop from 14K down to the recent low we saw just under 3 is a technical pattern. And that technical pattern results in bullish action. And what's interesting to me is I'm actually seeing all the retail traders, all the newbie traders are posting that one logarithmic trend line and saying that Bitcoin's going to go into a huge bear market that won't recover for 8+ years, when I'm also seeing my favorite whales and my top traders saying that it's still going to go to $30,000 plus, and that they had to crash the entire stock market to shake people out of Bitcoin before the halving. By the way, shout out to Angelo BTC. But when you've got the whales, the best trader on BitMEX ever, coming out and saying, listen, you guys, I'm still bullish till 30,000 per coin, you have to wonder what's going on from a technical perspective. And I believe I see what he's seeing from a technical perspective, and that would be a broadening wedge.
Yeah, and honestly, in times like this, I personally choose not to even rely so much on the technicals, because I feel like the technicals were enhanced more by the fundamental aspect of what recently happened in the world. And from a fundamental perspective, right now, there's more institutional development that's taken place since 2018 inside of Bitcoin. We now have more platforms for people to transfer fiat into Bitcoin. We now have more platforms for institutions to get involved with investing into Bitcoin. We now have futures. We have all of these things that were never even thought of in the last cycle, yet now everybody's too shaken out. And so I see this. Yeah, exactly. All of these big institutions. And, you know, we still have this ETF that we've been talking about. I think that that's still going to happen. Everybody's forgot about it at this point because it's been declined so many times. But there's still so many different factors that we have to, you know, factor into this. And I think that with this dip, it's shaking everybody out. It's shaking all the weak hands out. But when you look at it from a fundamental perspective, we now know that institutions have bought the dip and have been buying the dip since 3,200 because the amount of 1,000 Bitcoin addresses has gone parabolic, higher than even pre-Mt. Gox days. And so what that tells me, that in and of itself is a no-brainer, that institutions are buying the dip and have been buying. Now, I don't know where that exact chart is, and I would really love for anybody that knows what I'm talking about to be able to share that with me, because I would like to see how that's correlated now with this most recent dip, because in my opinion, with this most recent dip, that number has only gone.
And also in the top of the market, 20K, the amount of Bitcoin addresses with more than 1,000 was pretty low. So that tells you that the whales were they were probably spending their money going on, you know, traveling and taking their profits and stuff, just like we were in that period of time, spending a whole bunch of money, you know. And so you have to remember that, like, the timing of the market, and when you say not to worry about the technicals, I'm assuming you just mean not to only worship the technicals.
Right.
Yeah, because for me, the fundamentals and the technicals are lining up now more than they ever have.
For sure.
And so, and to see that, the divergence in price, but then the fundamentals and the technicals are all matching up for a perfect major bull run, you know, that tells me that I wouldn't be surprised if we get an ETF approved randomly.
Right.
It wouldn't surprise me at all if all of a sudden we get an ETF approved, Bitcoin, you know, starts rallying up to the previous resistance of 14K and goes into this bull market, and this was just a big 1 and a 2 wave. In Elliott wave theory, a 1 and a 2 wave, that 2 wave can retrace up to 99.9999999% of that wave, as long as it doesn't go below the exact bottom, which would be 3.2 thousand from that 2018 crash, then it's a valid 1 and a 2 wave. And so we haven't broken Elliott wave theory rules at all yet. Sometimes 1 waves are traced pretty deeply. We actually discussed how Bitcoin could go into a double bottom just because of how deep 1 waves are traced. I remember you mentioning that on your channel. And so it's just, you know, it's an amazing time. This is all energy, and I think that the stock market, big money needs a place to put their money. And I think that they set up all of this stuff in the stock market that they have set up so that they can exit the stock market, they can get into cryptocurrency, which is a safe haven, and they can profit off of all of that energy. And that's what the smart money is going to be doing right now. They're going to profit off of all of this energy.
The way I look at it is, you know, about a month or two ago, China started openly posting, but their newspaper headlines and everything was talking about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and blockchain technology. They even started studying blockchain technology in their schooling.
Yeah,
and so
teaching it.
You know, they wouldn't be teaching all of this stuff for no reason, and they wouldn't have been so on board with blockchain and crypto within this bear market just recently had there not been a certain reason. And to me, you know, with all of this pandemic stuff, China's already got a control on all of their problems. Now, it can hit America way harder, and it probably will, because we already have, reacted in a much slower way. Now, with that being said, crypto being a global market and a global scale, I do believe that, even if the rest of the world starts, China starts to combat this virus, and then other countries follow suit, and it kind of just becomes a thing that everybody gets control over. Even if it hits America way harder and we do suffer from this significantly, the rest of the world will live on. Yeah. And it's really the American stock market, the American companies that are going to see the hit. But Bitcoin is global, and Bitcoin is predominantly run by China already. Yeah. And so with us seeing China improving right now, with us seeing China getting over this virus, with them dropping their number of cases, with China actively educating their young about this technology, they're moving towards it.
China's
no
smart.
Doubt.
China is definitely positioning themselves for economic strength over the next 20 to 30 years, at least in their economy. And in my opinion, this is literally just an amazing time to be buying Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Just like what you said, everybody was begging to buy Bitcoin under 6K, and now the prophecy came true and they won't touch it.
Yeah.
So that's really what I want you guys to remember. We are working on stuff every single day. Donovan and I are talking about this stuff. We are looking at the economy, the stock market, how big the monthly rejection candlesticks are. We haven't had a monthly rejection candlestick like this since right before the internet bubble crash. So we're talking like early 2000s. And then 2003 came around and we had dropped 70% plus from that peak. And what we're seeing in the US stock market right now is a similar story playing out. Huge monthly rejection candlesticks. But we're not going to be on the wrong side of this. We're going to be the people making money off of all of this energy. We're going to host webinars to teach you guys how to profit off of all of the fear. We're going to teach you guys how you can buy the dip, because it will provide the biggest buying opportunity in our entire lifetimes. Honestly, if the stock market drops 50 or 70% like we think it might, that will provide us with the biggest buying dip opportunity that we will ever have, because literally the biggest that the stock market tends to correct is 50%, 20 to 50%. And then when it does like a Great Depression or an internet bubble event, it drops, 70 to 80%. So if we got a 70 to 80% drop in the stock market, that would be the single biggest opportunity in our entire lifetimes. We'd probably never see it drop like that again, unless we were like 90 years old or something like that. At that point, it doesn't even matter.
Exactly.
We'd already made so much money. But if it drops 50%, we'll probably only see that a few more times in our lifetime, like 5 or 6 times. We'll probably only see that a handful of times, because it generally only drops 50% every 8 to 10 years.
Right.
So this is actually, all of this stuff is providing the biggest opportunity, and it's the same thing with the stock market. Everybody wishes they could have bought the stock market after 2008. Everybody wished they could have bought the stock market after 2003. If we do crash, if what happens, like what we think is going to happen, happens, you guys will be able to buy the dip in the stock market, and you'll be able to be that person that said, I bought pure fear and I quadrupled my wealth. Mm-hmm. I 10x'd my entire wealth because I went out on a limb and I bought when everybody was fearful.
The way that I'm personally going to be going about this for my own trading plan is, from the very beginning when I got into cryptocurrency in 2016, cryptocurrency was my hedge against the failing economic system.
Yeah.
And so now that we're starting to see the early signs of a failing economic system, I'm all in on cryptocurrency and have been since 2016.
Makes you more confident.
Exactly.
Because it's literally doing exactly what you
That's what I don't understand,
the
is the fact that so many people were so angry, but this is literally what we've talked about the whole time. For me, cryptocurrency and my investments are a long-term thing. Yes, I'm getting wrecked in the short term. Yes, my long-term account went half in the matter of 2 days. Yeah, all of that happened, but at the end of the day, I've been in crypto. I've seen what the volatility is like. I've been through a bear market.
You've had to watch your money go like that before.
As long as you're not selling, nothing should matter to you. Because for me, I've always thought this was a long-term prospect. I was willing to hold until the end of 2021. Now that we're seeing some short-term reacting, it didn't make me randomly change my plan and just sell the bottom. No, instead I took the tiny bit of cash that I had in my bank and I bought some Bitcoin.
You doubled down on your belief. Yeah.
And that's really all I can say right now is the fact that from a long-term perspective, nothing has changed. Everything's only gotten better. Cryptocurrency was always my personal hedge against the failing system. Now that we're seeing the system fail, why are you selling all of your stuff? Why are you getting mad at me for you seeing short-term losses? If you didn't sell the bottom, then just hold through this whole entire correction. Because, obviously if we start selling support, then that's going to be major and that will require an update. Because if we sell support, we're going lower. But honestly, guys, for me, I'm willing to hold through all of this uncertainty. I've always been willing to hold through all of this uncertainty. And so now that we're starting to see all of that, it's just my trading plan requires me and has required me to hold through this. And so, I'm not fearful right now. Yes, it is a big shakeout. Yes, there's a lot of different things that are going on in the world. But all in all, I view this as what has to be done before we will see new all-time highs in Bitcoin. And I'm still betting on that long-term trend of playing out.
This right here is the shakeout that is shaking people out and shaking the exact belief that you just said. This sell-off in Bitcoin is the shakeout that shakes the people out that don't believe that Bitcoin is a hedge against the failing financial system, because it was correlated to the S&P 500 drop. And so it's shaking out everybody that thinks, oh no, Bitcoin is only going to continue to be correlated to the S&P and we're all screwed here. And that is what needs to happen before it to become a hedge against failing economies, is you have to have that shakeout of the people that believed that but didn't believe it fully enough. Didn't believe it enough to let price reflect that, for the longer term. So there's a ton of money to be made off this energy. My mentor told me, he said, dive into fear. He said, don't let fear control you. Think about the absolute worst possible outcome. Think about the absolute best possible outcome. Plan for both and do what makes the most sense to you, And that right there is what I think of when I think of the stock market. It's like, I'm going to invest in Bitcoin. I'm going to buy the dip after we get a large drop in stocks. But I'm going to invest in Bitcoin right now as a hedge against that drop. I will invest in oil, but for me it's like, if Bitcoin fails, if the stock market fails, if oil fails, if everything fails, dude, I'm going to go make black powder because I know how to make black powder from scratch, and I'm going to go build a cabin somewhere.
We're going to take all the AR-15s.
Full on bug out mode. AR-15s, I was raised by Republicans. No, but all joking aside, if everything fails, your investments don't matter anyways.
Yeah, that's the point.
That's literally, so dive into the fear, think about the most crazy and think about the best possible outcome. In my opinion, the best possible outcome is we all get wealthy AF from Bitcoin, from cryptocurrency. The stock market drops like crazy. We have a whole bunch of money that we can put into the stock market because everything just dropped. We have a whole bunch of money we can put into real estate. Oil will be worth $20 or less a barrel, so we can buy cheap oil. Silver will have potentially went to even a new low and a better buying opportunity, although in the long term it's pretty cheap right now. Everything will be setting up for these huge long-term opportunities. So that's the best possible scenario. That's what I'm planning for. That's what I'm thinking, right now, structuring my life around. If it doesn't work that way, then, the apocalypse was going to happen anyways. You have to stay logical and remove the fear.
Yeah, really, for me, it comes down to two scenarios. Kind of what I foresee happening is, I think that if the stock market tops out and we see a big correction in most indices in America, that's going to lead to, oil's already started to crash. And so I would assume that gold would kind of come back down a little bit with it.
Yeah. Probably.
And all of those things would probably drop off a little bit in the original decline. I think that gold could still see a short-term peak when all of this kind of happens, but overall I think it would mainly come down with it.
Well, long-term gold will be very, very bullish. Now, what happens on the short term, it's really hard to tell, and we need to see how resistance reacts, basically, because we're at major resistance. We went up towards the previous high. That major resistance could be pretty powerful, especially if the stock market crashes too. But that would be a short-term thing. I think gold would recover faster than the stock market after the dip.
Gold's really the one
because it's
dark
also
horse.
a hedge against a stock market.
That's why I'm
crash.
watching gold, is because gold is really the one dark horse here. Because I thought that maybe oil would start to go up with gold, but what we saw was oil crash, gold went up, and silver's looking like it's getting hit pretty hard. And so it's looking like they might go down a little bit. But I mean, in the case if literally gold, oil, stocks go down, Bitcoin's probably going to go down with those, or it is a possibility where if all those things start crashing, it's going to drag down everything with it. It could be possible where Bitcoin is that hedge, and that's pretty much what I've bet on this whole time. But you got to remember that in the case of everything starts crashing, it does not matter what you're invested in, it's all going to go down. And that's why food, resources, clothing, supplies, things like that are way more invaluable than any of the sort of stocks or investments that you could take. Because at the end of the day, when all of those come down, it does not matter what you're invested in, they're all going to go down. And so really the way I've planned for this is either we're facing continuation, we might see a shakeout. Really what I've been preparing for since I got into crypto was we were going to see this big wealth transfer take place. And it's like an energy that you're saying, because money is just energy, because all of these things are energy, and they all flow through each other. Now, the thing that I've been watching for is the fact that I believe that this is going to be a big wealth transfer between these older generations and then the younger kids, the millennials. We're actually even below the millennials, but just people that are even a little bit older than us that are starting to now get into society, 20 to 35-year-olds. These people are starting to make livings for themselves, and these people grew up in more of a digital era anyways. I try and talk to my boomer grandpa about Bitcoin. He literally cannot comprehend one single point about it. It's just impossible for them to understand.
He's always
it's not that he's dumb, it's just that they don't understand technology. And so what's coming is going to be a big wealth transfer where all of these old heads that have been investing in the exact same stuff their entire lives, eventually it's not going to work. And it only makes sense that if the stock market tops, even if it's a 40-50% correction, that's going to be enough to completely wipe out people's 401ks. It's going to be enough to completely, render a lot of people completely useless financially. And I think that we're going to see that shake out. And for me, Bitcoin's been the hedge for that. I viewed Bitcoin as a thing that I was going to buy. Stock market tops out, rinse and repeat. Old money goes into the newer people, the young thriving generation that was able to capitalize on these short-term trends. That's the way I'm going. And if I'm wrong, World War III apocalypse statics, AR-15s in my tent.
What could have we done anyways? Exactly. So I completely agree with that statement. And the wealth transfer has already started. You can see it just in the fact that younger people, some of the richest people in America are YouTubers that are my age, you know. So it's you've got a lot of really, really wealthy young people. That's only going to get bigger. The 401k is basically I'm going to say something that will probably frustrate some people just because of the indoctrination that this country has done to people. But a 401k is the government's Ponzi scheme, 100%. They basically tell you, okay, get a good job that has a secure life and then save all your 401k, good benefits, health insurance, and make sure you're putting into your 401k, and then by the time that person is ready to retire, a recession happens. It's almost always correlated directly with generational recessions, so by the time that person is ready to retire, their 401k is worthless because the stock market just dropped 50 or 80%. And so then they're completely out of all of the money that they put into it, and they were told and promised that it would be worth more because the stock market continues to grow at a specific rate. Well, guess what? There's market cycles. Sometimes you have to correct. And so that's what 401ks are. And so I think that's another even bigger reason that Bitcoin is a hedge against all of this stuff, is because I know a lot of people putting money into Bitcoin because they know that their 401k is a scam, and that they need something when everything hits the fan to hedge them and secure themselves against that loss in value. One thing I do want to say about stocks and commodities dropping, if there is a drop in the stock market, we may see that reflect in gold. But I will say this, there's also an equal amount of commodities like wheat and oil, which is starting to get really undervalued, especially once it fails support and goes in for that final wave, that have already been correcting so long that they're ahead of the stock market and will actually work as an effective hedge.
Exactly.
Specifically wheat futures. Wheat futures looks very, very good right now.
And if you keep that perspective in mind and you even just take a look at the invert correlations between the stocks, you're looking at tech stocks, you're looking at other indices, major indices in the stock market. If you just zoom out, you're going to see a very, very, very parabolic trend that goes high. Now, if you look at oil, you're going to see a chart that's very, very low in correlation to its cycle.
Very parabolic down.
Yeah, exactly. And then you look at crypto, same thing, parabolic down. We've been in this big correction for a while. Obviously, if you look at the big picture of the trend, cryptocurrency is still very much intact. But we have been in this big bear market for so long. It only makes sense that, when some of these other overvalued assets start to top out, that money's got to go somewhere. And I really do believe in the hedge of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. I can't speak the same for a lot of other altcoins because honestly, these other altcoins have even more to prove than Bitcoin does at this point.
Yeah.
And so I cannot speak the same for all of the other altcoins
they don't have
out there.
as good of a track record.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm still confident in them long term.
There's a lot of alts I think look way good right now.
Anytime, it's just so, it's meant to perform well in the current situation, and that's why I believe that Bitcoin was directly created after that financial crisis in 2008. It's because it was created to be a hedge for what's about to happen and what has just started taking place. Honestly, we've had this big banking Ponzi for the last 100+ years. We've known that this was an issue, but the thing about it is banking and credit bubbles. Banking was the problem, but the virus and this pandemic was really just the excuse for all of this. Yeah.
Hashtag don't want to get demonetized.
I said it in one of my other videos and didn't get demonetized.
I didn't get it either, but it's too risky. So check this out right here. This right here is the S&P 500 next to gold. And I'm just going to audibly explain this because we're putting this podcast on iTunes anyway, so we don't want to do like a lot of technical analysis. That'll be saved for our videos, which, by the way, subscribe to both of our channels so you get 5 videos a week. Specifically, 4 of them are dedicated to technical analysis. Okay, this right here is the 2003 internet bubble crash. You notice how gold just trended up during that period. Gold wasn't even negatively affected at all from the 2003 crash. In fact, gold performed well during the stock market crash of 2003. And then look at what happens right here. In 2008, during the 2008 financial crisis, gold started to do bad, but then by the bottom of the correction, by the bottom of the cycle, gold had already recovered and was breaking its previous all-time high. So it actually showed a lot more strength than stocks did during the 2008 financial crisis. And then we see gold correct right here, and that's actually a huge, huge rally in stocks. So we see a cross correlation right here where gold corrects, stocks rally, and then we start to see them trending up together again right here. So what I'm watching for gold may be lagging behind the stock market. So the stock market might correct and then gold might correct as well. But then when you're looking at stuff like wheat, so they're cross-correlated in areas, but not always. But then if you look at something like wheat, look at this. Do you see how undervalued wheat is at this point?
That looks like Tezos.
Yeah, it looks like Tezos before Tezos mooned, before Tezos went way high in value. So there's like a lot of commodities and stocks and stuff associated with commodities, like stocks that are associated with commodities that are amazing investment opportunities. That are great hedges against a financial collapse. For me, it's Bitcoin, wheat, some of these other stuff. Maybe gold. We'll see how it reacts. But I wanted today's podcast to really remind you guys to convert that fear into clarity, and that's really what we help you guys with. That's That's what we've learned how to do for ourselves.
It's really times like this that makes you ask yourself, why are you really here? Because this is the move that's going to shake out all the weak hands. So I mean, if you're somebody that follows the same sort of belief systems that we have regarding cryptocurrency, then obviously all of this short-term price action should not really matter to you a whole lot. And this is exactly why I don't do a whole lot of day trading.
Or like BitMEX, which got shut down because of the
Exactly. There's so
stuff.
many liquidations that were taking place in that sell-off. BitMEX was offline for 18 hours. And it's just these sort of things that are just so hard to even know what's going to happen. That's why actually, and this isn't even supposed to be sponsored by anyway, but Dudex has a trading plan system that
anti-liquidation.
Yeah, exactly. And so that is actually really important. And I've had them hit me. I've had some of their marketing team hit me up a lot to
work with you.
Yeah, and so to be completely honest, I think that I'm going to start, not that I'm going to start promoting them yet, but I wanted to start actually putting some Bitcoin over there, seeing how their exchange works, because honestly, I'm not against margin trading and I'm not against day trading, but the problem is new people that are getting into it are going to get chopped up and they're going to lose their money trying to figure it out most of the time. That's why for my channel, I like to stick to the long-term perspective, because not only is my portfolio based around the long term, but the people that follow me are going to be able to resonate with the things that I teach, and it's a lot easier to know from a long-term perspective. Now, even though some of the technicals had been broken from some of my last videos, the long-term trend is still very much intact. And then this is where when your technicals get invalidated sometimes, this is why it's important to know the fundamental perspective regarding cryptocurrency in your investments, because from the very beginning this has been hedged against the failing system, and we're seeing all of this volatility in the world, and this just gives me further strength to just hold through that. And it's like, if you don't know your trading plan, if you're somebody that just recently got into here and you're just kind of buying crypto for fun, just hoping that you make a bunch of money, now is the time where you really want to dive into your research. Now is the time where you really want to make sure you know why you're investing into this. Because for me and you, we know our why. We've been here throughout the bear markets. We held through that bear market. We know what it's like to see your investments completely go crashing down, altcoins completely get delisted and fall off the face of the earth. We've been through all of that. And so now you guys have that opportunity where you can ask yourself that same question. Is this something you really want to be a part of? Are you willing to risk what you have? If you've risked what you have, are you too over leveraged, and have you made some very costly mistakes? All of this is very important, and it's in these times of the most fear that you figure out and you learn exactly what you need to really help you progress to that next point.
It's really, you learn to get the most excited when everybody else is scared. You learn to do exactly what we talked about, which is turning that fear into clarity and getting excited.
Even though this has been the biggest shakeout and I've had more people angry at me, messaging me with all kinds of angry things, this has been the most exciting days in cryptocurrency I've had since who knows. Because even in the bull run, everything was constantly going up. Maybe from when we went from 3K to 20K, that was real crazy. Maybe the China FUD from when they banned Bitcoin in 2016, that was pretty crazy. But realistically, this has been the craziest swing I've ever been a part of, no doubt in my mind. Just for it to be on the downside makes it way scarier, because you're not making money, you're losing it unless you shorted it. But even then, a lot of really good traders that I see, a lot of them have been very transparent with how their trading was affected in this recent sell-off, because because honestly, they've been reacted the same way. They've seen a lot of people angry towards them. And at the end of the day, a lot of those people have been transparent with what happened to their own accounts, and a lot of them took very, very big losses and saw these huge fluctuations in their accounts. A lot of them said that they made a lot of mistakes and wish they could have done something, they had regrets. But you got to remember, it did not only affect you guys, it affected us, it affected all of the people that were in the market. Very, very, very few people saw this coming, and what people did see this coming really didn't have it going as low as it did. This was a big shakeout caused by a lot of economic fear and uncertainty, and so we got to keep that in mind when it comes to us actually going together with this market.
There's always a few people that get mad when the price drops, but the overwhelming amount of people that thank you when the price goes up and when they successfully hedge against a failing financial system always makes up for it. And that's why I ask you guys to ask yourself, what are you in this for? Are you trying to get rich instantly? Are you trying to get rich quick, get rich instantly? Or are you trying to honestly hedge yourself against a failing financial system so that you can set yourself up and position yourself for long-term profit, for long-term wealth, so that you can buy the dip in cheap stocks once it drops harder, and you can invest in commodities, you can invest in Bitcoin, you can properly hedge yourself to be wealthy for the long term, and not to get rich instantly, have like a lottery winning experience, and then have nothing to show for it.
Because it's those
afterwards.
people that you're just gambling, plain and simple. You have an addiction, and you're only going to lose your money because it's not. It's rigged, so you do lose your money. It's the people that during the times like this, you can keep a level head, you can stick to your trading plan, and you can follow it through. Win, lose, and there is no draw because you're either going to win or you're going to lose unless the markets just stop trading forever. And that's really the only two scenarios that we've got here. And so for me, I've trusted my trading plan this far. I'm going to continue to trust that. I don't have all of this same attachment to my money. Yes, I've got a lot of money riding into cryptocurrency. Yes, I've seen a lot of losses over the last few days. But I could see that number go completely to zero, and it's not going to change how I feel, because it's really, guys, it's these times, and I can't stress this enough, that you're going to learn the most about yourself. You're going to learn the most about investing, trading. It's these times where you're scared, where you're going to get all that motivation to seek out resources to educate you. And it's honestly, it's the people that use these scary times as a form of education and something to grow from that are going to be the people 2 years down the line that you're going to see on Twitter, you're going to see on YouTube talking about all of this money they made in cryptocurrency. They're going to be the people that were sitting in our seats doing the same thing. And it could very easily be you guys, and that's really what we want to see, is more people that we're able to kind of do what we've done for ourselves. And that's what we're here for, is to help mentor you guys through the longevity of this process, because from day one, this whole podcast has really been just that. Just for us to kind of get on here, talk about what's happening in our own lives, talk about what's happening in crypto, and then help relate to the overall subject of what's taking place. And right now we've seen a major sell-off, we're seeing a lot of fear, we're seeing a lot of people panic selling, capitulating, getting out of the market. And this, to be quite honest, is the exact point in which you want to be a part of it. Now's not the time to get shaken out. You would have wanted to get shaken out way earlier before this. And so now if you're here, you might as well just stick to this trend, because I'm going to see how it plays out. And to be quite honest, I know from my perspective as well as yours, this is the most exciting thing that could have happened. Because not only do we have volatility, we have cheaper prices to accumulate. I don't have any cash left. Sucks. But you know what? I hope other people out there do. I know people in my group, one guy actually, I think he cashed out like 40 or 80 grand, just extra cash that he had, and it was about 5 days ago, he said that his money gets here in about 3 or 4 days, and so
he's going to deploy a lot of cash. Yeah, he'll be set for life.
He'll be set
for life.
I mean, the same can be said for if you were somebody that was buying the same times that I was buying, and you're now sitting at a loss. Like, really, the only thing left to do would be to hold it until that trend develops into something that's more sustainable, because right now we have a massive sell-off. Now's not the time where you want to be really trying to trade and swing trade and revenge trade, because it's really these times where you're going to get chopped up. Revenge trading? I've seen that a lot. That was the thing I woke up to a lot of, was people saying that they took some losses and that they were trying to, either margin trade it, trying to short the market, trying to do something. And it's just like, you know what?
Yeah,
if
most
you held through this part,
short.
If you held through this much of action, just wait for the freaking trend to develop so that we actually have an understanding, because it's either going to swing up really high quickly, it's going to swing down really low quickly, and so, why not just kind of hold up for a second and let that stabilize for a minute? What I've been kind of comparing this dip to was the sell-off that we saw in Bitcoin back in the last cycle, the capitulation from $1,100 down to sub $200. We saw that same thing happen where we consolidated sideways for almost a year's time. At first, we took that stab. It was the first capitulation down to those lows. We immediately get bought up. We kind of trend sideways.
Buy up again, and then
we make another major sell-off straight back down to those lows. And this looks the same. And we can see
just
something
like the
else.
NASDAQ after the internet bubble, reaches a low, bounces up, goes sideways, double bottoms right back onto that previous low, returns to the bull trend. So it's not like we're seeing market structure that can't definitely go into a massive bull run, which I personally think it is going to. And so I just really, want to remind people to keep a good perspective, this is an exciting time to be in the market. I'm really, really looking forward to all the money that we are about to make. Yeah, it dropped. Yeah, we saw some crazy drops in our account, but this is the best time to be in cryptocurrency. And you know, when we're looking back at this time a few years down the road and we're watching this video, I can guarantee that we're going to see and we're going to be like, wow, we were really, really doing some smart things in that period of time to set ourselves up and position ourselves for a profitable, long-term, wealthy lifestyle. And it's either that or we're all going to look like kind of retarded. So we'll see what happens. But I'm willing to take that risk, and that's just the fun of investing in this. So
fundamentals haven't changed. It's still the same revolutionary technology that's going to completely change everything. Whether we dip a little bit lower or whether the bull run has started now, it really, no matter what, my trading plan stays the same, and so I'm just going to continue to hold through that. And so, you know, right now, make sure that you guys understand what your own trading plan is if you're here for the long term. Obviously, all this short-term action should not even phase you, and really, all you should be looking at any dip is a buying opportunity. Nobody knows how big the dip's going to be. It could swing 45% in a day like we just saw. You just have to be willing and able to capitalize that, and even if you're not in a place to capitalize on that, understanding your trading plan is really what's going to keep you holding that trend and what's going to keep you from taking irrational decisions and just taking losses. It's scary right now. A lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. People are going to be out of jobs with this recent crash. I've already talked to a lot of people that I know personally inside of the oil field with oil crashing. There's hardly any oil jobs out there. The jobs that you can go get are in the worst places in America to go work. Wyoming, North Dakota, West Texas. And so, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty.
The most intense, kind of
the
rough.
Worst. You want to go to 120, 130 degree heat with tornadoes? Do you want to go to freezing -60 below in North Dakota? Or do you want to go to the windy, freezing, and hot, best of both worlds in Wyoming? And so right now, there's going to be a lot of fear, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty, but it's in these times that we don't want to try and make the decisions. We want to have already had a plan in place, so that when this stuff kind of starts happening, we already know what route we're taking. And for us, that's holding the long-term trend. For you, that's for you guys to decide.
The thing about oil right now, though, is oil is going into the biggest bear trap in history. So if you guys have ever been in a bull trap before, where you bought the market and then it reversed and just kept going down and failed all support and was a bull trap, that's exactly what's... Oil is probably going to drop further, but it's just making a big bear trap. So anybody that tries to short that market is just going to be so unbelievably wrecked when it recovers.
It's going to recover hard, and it's going to shake.
And everybody that's in oil, they're all selling all of their oil companies, and all the people that are buying up those super cheap oil companies are going to be super, super wealthy. And that's the same thing that's happening in Bitcoin. The stock market's probably going to make a huge bull trap, bounce up over the next few weeks. Everybody's going to be like, oh, we recovered. China got coronavirus under control. Everything's going to be okay. And then it's probably going to go into a bull trap and crash harder. And oil is just making a big bear trap, and Bitcoin is just making a big bear trap. So don't be the person that's trapped with the bears. That's pretty much everything that I want to talk about today, you guys. Turn that fear into clarity. It's a very, very powerful thing. Also, dive into your fears. Think of the worst possible, the best possible, and plan for those outcomes.
People
and those
that
scenarios.
have a plan right now are the people that are going to be maximizing the highest ROI, and it's really the plan that's going to keep you sane in all of these fearful times. We're just here to help support everybody that might be going through some losses. Everybody's going through some losses unless you've just not had a long-term portfolio and you're the best short-term trader that ever walked the earth. And so, don't get shaken out. Continue to hold that trend. If you guys have any questions, always remember to reach out to us. You guys can drop comments. You guys can reach out to either two of our Discords. We're going to have links in the description to each channel, so make sure you guys go subscribe to Dallin and my channel. We post 5 days a week.
We're getting a whole bunch of people together too to make strategies and profit off of all of this craziness. So we're probably going to form some type of a collective of people. And also, like I said, webinars are coming out that will teach you guys how to profit off of all of this. as well. So I think it's a time for everybody to come together. And with that being said, like what Donovan was saying, join the Discord in both of our descriptions. Make sure that you're subscribed to both of us so you get those 5 video updates every single week on the technicals, and then the podcast every weekend. So
yeah, so thank you guys so much for tuning in today's video. Smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, both of our channels. We will see you guys in the next update. Don't get shaken out, don't get too scared. Come up with some good questions, because we always like to hear that. You guys, like I said, you can answer those to either of us in our Discords. We're going to be doing a Q&A podcast here pretty soon, because I've had a lot of people reach out asking for that. So you guys can expect that. If you do have some questions that you want answered, make sure to get a hold of us. You know, we have a number of different social media links, so it's really just up to you guys to reach out. But we're going to be compiling a bunch of different questions, and then we're going to be, you know, talking about those questions that you guys had in the next podcast, so you guys can stay tuned for that. But
yeah, so get ready to get super rich off this Bitcoin bear trap, you guys.
Yeah, it's
Thanks for tuning in, and as always, stay profitable out there.